unto, to remember and accept. I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words.
Good morning, everyone. Is the sound okay? Yes? Okay. So it's wonderful to be here at Zen Center. I don't come here very often, even though this used to be my home. So it's wonderful to come back and see new people and see old friends. And thank you so much for inviting me. It's really my privilege to be among you. So, I live in Muir Beach near Green Gulch Farm. And so this morning I was getting myself ready. I had my talk, I had my okesa, but I forgot my robe. And so I thought, oh, okay, well, we will be innovative. And so I got here and I asked Lorenzo, do you have a robe? And he loaned me his samoe top. Thank you so much. So, I would like to start with just a little bit of meditation practice. We breathe in the Earth's atmosphere, and by it we are refreshed and enlivened. We breathe out, falling into the Earth by the force of gravity, letting go of everything. Breathing in, we allow breath to lift our body from the inside out. Breathing out, we let go of tension in our neck, our shoulders, our back, allowing it to fall away like falling rain, falling petals, falling leaves, falling into earth. Breathing in the Earth's atmosphere, falling into the Earth's gravity. This is what we share with all living beings, regardless of religious or political persuasion. We are bound together in these ways that we hardly ever think about. Gravity is an organizing principle for life on Earth. Our size, our muscles and bones evolved in this size and shape because of the Earth's gravity. The largest land animal on Earth today is the African elephant, weighing 5,000 to 14,000 pounds. That's as large as an animal can get, living and moving around in the Earth's atmosphere. The ratio of muscle to bone maxes out at that size. A blue whale, which is the largest animal ever to live on Earth, weighs 200,000 to 300,000 pounds. So that's 40 to 50 elephants. A blue whale, of course, is buoyant in the water, which allows that animal to grow so large. When a blue whale is beached, it dies of gravity. So this is how gravity is an organizing principle for life on Earth. Our body is not independent of this world of atmosphere and gravity. The body is of atmosphere and gravity. And this is the basis of our meditation practice. So I would like to change tacks here and talk about, tell you that for the last year or so, I've been learning about the tradition of Buddhist women ancestors and teachers, the intense discrimination that many lived through, and their stories, often tragic, often abusive, often involving tragic loss and abuse, of how they came to Buddhist practice. There have been many Buddhist leaders and teachers who have not opened the door for women with the aspiration to practice, yet women have always found a way throughout the history of Buddhism. Shakyamuni Buddha was egalitarian for his time. He did not uphold the caste system in the Buddhist Sangha. And though it took a few years for him to be persuaded to allow women to ordain, and you probably know the story of Buddha's aunt and stepmother Mahapajapati, who with Ananda's help finally convinced Shakyamuni Buddha to allow women to ordain. So he did open that door. And in his lifetime, the community of ordained women grew and flourished. In Tang Dynasty China, which is 7th to 9th century, 7th to early 10th century, it also seems to have been a time relatively friendly to women practitioners and teachers. So we have a few of their stories and teachings. And today, what I'd like to talk about is, I'd like to talk from Dogen's fascicle, Receiving the Marrow by Bowing, in which he speaks strongly in support of women's practice. Dogen truly stands out in Buddhist history as a person of the way, supportive of any human being with the aspiration to practice. He was very supportive of women of the way and disparaged people who were not. From his writing in the fascicle, Receiving the Marrow by Bowing, one gets the impression that his acceptance and support of women's practice was not the most common attitude among Buddhists of his time. Here's one statement from the fascicle. Why are men special? Emptiness is emptiness. 4 great elements are 4 great elements. 5 skandhas are 5 skandhas. Women are just like that. Both men and women attain the way. You should honor attainment of the way. Do not discriminate between men and women. This is the most wondrous principle of the Buddha way. In Receiving the Marrow by Bowing, Dogen says this is transmitted through our utmost sincerity and our trusting heart. There is no path that comes from anything other than sincere trust. Utmost sincerity and trusting heart is our aspiration for the way. In a passage honoring 9th century Tang Dynasty Zen giant Zhaozhou, in honoring his aspiration for the way, he quotes him, I will ask about Dharma from anyone who surpasses me, even a 7-year-old. I will teach anyone who is behind me, even a 100-year-old. Dogen goes on, when asking a 7-year-old about Dharma, an old man like Zhaozhou bows. It is an extraordinary aspiration, the mind art of an old Buddha. I love this phrase, mind art. That's from Kaz Tanahashi. Mind art is a clear and beautiful expression of aspiration for the way and of the craft of our Zazen practice. Dogen says, practice with heart, practice with beyond heart. Practice even with half a heart. So Dogen is finding inspiration in such Tang Dynasty Zen giants as Zhaozhou, who express the courage, commitment, and trust, deep love, and sincerity that Dogen expressed so radically and beautifully. Dogen presents the stories of two influential women, teachers of the Tang Dynasty. The first story is of Venerable Woman teacher Moshan Liaoran and Venerable teacher Zhi, who after leaving his teacher Linji went to see Moshan, the woman teacher. Moshan said, "Where are you from?" Zhi said, "From the entrance." Moshan said, "Why don't you close it off?" Zhi was silent. Zhi. He then bowed and expressed himself as a student of Moshan. Then he asked, "How is Moshan?" Moshan said, "It does not show its peak." Zhi, "Who is the person inside the mountain?" Moshan said, "It is beyond man and woman." Zhi, "How come you don't change?" Moshan said, "I am not a wild fox spirit. Why should I change?" Zhi stayed at Moshan's temple as the head gardener for 3 years. And I think he eventually became abbot of that temple. Dogen's comment is, the fact that Zhi bowed to Nun Liaoran of Moshan and asked for Dharma was an excellent example of aspiration, a model for latecomers. It should be called hammering open the gate bar or breaking through a bamboo node. I love that. I don't know exactly what that means. And I might have it wrong. But I'm imagining that breaking through a bamboo through the node would be really difficult, as would opening a gate by hammering open the gate bar. And it reminds me of my dear tortoise. Myrtle the turtle, the tortoise was her name. She died a few months ago. She walked around our house, and sometimes she would get to a wall or a door and just keep walking into the wall or into the door. She just kept walking. She would not turn right or left. She wouldn't stop walking either. Well, sometimes she would. After a while, she might fall asleep and turn right or left when she woke up. But for the longest time, she would just keep walking into the wall, no matter what. Something about her walking into the wall was always inspiring to me. She didn't seem to have a sense of needing to change her aspiration just because of a mere wall. She did not seem to be focused on outcome or accomplishment or destination, just seemed to be simply acting on pure aspiration to keep walking no matter what. That spirit reminds me of Dogen. He says, look to trees and rocks, fields and villages to expound the Dharma. Ask pillars about Dharma and investigate with walls. Such a visceral statement about the Zazen practice, not metaphorical, abstract, or symbolic, just pointing to the actual moments of our lives. Your utmost sincerity and trusting heart. There is no path that comes from anything other than sincere trust. This is the spirit from which Dogen speaks about women's practice. Moshan Liaoran was a disciple of Dai Yu. According to Andy Ferguson, she is the primary remaining example of a prominent female teacher among the early records of the Zen school. In the conversation with Zhixian, she says, "I am not a wild fox spirit." In other words, I do not employ magical powers to conform to the custom of having to be a man to enter nirvana. Our practice is not like that. It is inclusive. It is radically inclusive, beyond inclusive. Investigate with walls. The next story Dogen tells in Receiving the Marrow by Bowing is of Miao Xin, venerable woman teacher. Miao Xin was a student of Yangshan, 9th century Tang Dynasty. Yangshan was a student of Guishan, and both of them were famous and influential in their own time. They were founders of the Guiyang school, which was one of the 5 schools of Zen from the Tang Dynasty. The 2 remaining schools of those 5 are what we now know as Rinzai and Soto. However, the 5 schools changed and morphed, so it wasn't like a straight line through from Rinzai to the present and Soto to the present. Miao Xin was appointed director of the guest house by Abbot Yangshan. And according to Dogen, she had everyone's support. Dogen tells the story in which 17 monks came by looking for a teacher and stopped at the guest house, where Miao Xin was director. In the evening, the 17 monks were discussing the story of Huineng and the banner in the wind. You know the one. Is the wind moving or is the banner moving? Huineng comes along and says, "It is your mind that is moving." Miao Xin, overhearing this discussion, says to her attendant, "How wasteful. How many pairs of straw sandals have these 17 blind donkeys worn out?" I love donkeys. They haven't even dreamed of Buddha Dharma. So Miao Xin's comments are reported to the 17 monks, who cleaned themselves up, offered incense, bowed, and asked for her teaching. She said, "It is not the wind that flaps. It is not the banner that flaps. It is not that your mind flaps." Then Dogen offers this beautiful clarifying statement. When we see the person who has attained Dharma, someone who is new and extraordinary sees us. When we see the person, today sees today. When we see the person, someone who is new and extraordinary sees us. When we see the person, today sees today. This reminds me of my dear teacher, Maureen Stewart Roshi, who was abbess of the Cambridge Buddhist Society until her death in 1990. This is her statement in her book. When you see a flower, really see a flower, the flower sees you. She goes on to say, it's not that the flower has eyes. You and flower together become seeing, a brand new, never before in the entire universe moment of seeing. Saying the mind flaps implies a static concept of mind. And we know that mind is not static. So Miao Xin is pointing to the way the monks were trying to pin down mind as an object of understanding, an object of accomplishment. Miao Xin seems to be saying, no pinning down, no accomplishment. Mind does not flap. Flapping flaps. And what is that supposed to mean anyway? These expressions are at the edge of language, literal and also poetic. Dogen ends the fascicle with these words. Even 7-year-old girls who practice Buddha Dharma and express Buddha Dharma are guiding teachers of the 4 types of disciples. That means monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen. They are compassionate parents of sentient beings. They are like dragon princesses who have attained Buddhahood. You should make an offering and respect them just as you respect Buddha Tathagatas. This is an authentic custom of the Buddha way. Those who do not know this custom and do not receive it should be pitied. I love this. If you've ever, I'm a retired school teacher, so I've hung around with 7-year-old girls and boys, and let me tell you, if you haven't done so, find yourself some 7-year-olds. And if you can't do that, find your own 7-year-old. That is always present. Here we have Zen language of not this and not that. It is not this, it is not that. And reluctance to say, oh, then what is it? Because what it is dropping the language of subject-object, dropping the perception of subject-object. I think we know this experience well, and children live in and out of this place, as do we. But we are all taught and trained to sort the world and our experience into discrete objects and moments, and then to live in this conceptualized world as in a fog, as in a trance. Our Zazen practice Our Zazen practice, then, is not to make an enemy of fog, an object of fog, or a project of lifting fog, because making an enemy, an object of fog, our delusion, is simply making an enemy, an object. And we again are engaging our making an enemy muscle, which is already pretty strong, or making an object muscle. More it is to allow fog to be fog. Allow ourselves to be in a fog together with all beings. In the postscript of receiving the Marrow by bowing, Dogen speaks of treating women as objects of sexual desire. He goes on to say, women can be such objects. Men can be such objects. Those who are neither men nor women can be the object. Phantoms and flowers of emptiness can be the object. Gods can be the objects. Demons can be the objects. We cannot finish counting all the causes of impure conduct. So this again gives a sense of, we throw our attention to the object, but it's that judgment muscle, that over-exercised judgment or object-making muscle, that is really the craft of our Zazen practice. Then Dogen says, when you see an object, learn to clarify it. I love that. That is, our practice is more to clarify seeing than the object of seeing. When we see a flower, the flower sees us. When we see the person, today, seize today. That's what I have to say about the Dogen fascicle. And now I would like to pivot in another direction, and it looks like I have some time to do so. You ready to pivot? Okay. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. These are the words of Kamala Harris, May 10th, 2023, on the occasion of a swearing-in ceremony for members of a commission focused on expanding educational opportunities for Hispanic and Latino Americans. And I've been thinking about this in reference to Buddhist practice and our responsibility to care for our practice and pass it on, as has been done for over 2,500 years. We practice in a context, a wide, old context, a complex context. As I read these old stories about women finding a way in their lives to embrace and care for Buddhism no matter what, and pass it on, I'm impressed by the obstructions and the challenges to do so in their lives, some similar to ours and many unfathomably different. So I'd like to talk about one of the big differences. And this is the human population. I'm kind of a numbery person. You know, I was a science teacher, so I think about numbers and stuff, systems. So I think about the human population. So here's what I looked up and discovered. The human population during Shakyamuni's life compared to the present. What I found is that the human population in 500 BCE was estimated to be about 100 million. 100 million. So to give that a little perspective, in the present day, the population of Japan is about 123 million. Germany is about 85 million. And Mexico is about 130 million. So that's 100 million. The US, of course, is about 342 million. So 100 million times 10 is a billion. So I wondered, when did the human population reach 1 billion? And what I discovered is, the answer is 1804. 1804 is when the human population reached 1 billion, and increased by a factor of 10. So to get from 100 million to 1 billion took, this is for emphasis, 2,300 years. 2,300 years to get from 100 million to 1 billion. 220 years to get from 1 billion to 8 billion and counting. So the thing about this for me is that numbers are personal. They're not abstract. It's like gravity. You know, we think of gravity as something you learned in middle school, which is true. I taught it in middle school, but gravity is personal. It's our body's relationship to the earth, day in and day out. It's our body's, our body is an expression of the earth's gravity. Same with numbers. These numbers are huge and abstract, but it's personal that there are 8 billion people on the face of the earth. It's personal that Norman and I were talking that I think the population has tripled in my lifetime, more or less. That's personal. That is a personal experience that has all kinds of impacts and ramifications that I could not ever track. I could not ever exactly know. And, this is in the middle of a Buddhist talk, so I'm hoping that we can, in our discussion, I'll allow time for discussion, sort of connect the dots here. And, the ways that 8 billion people is personal, we can list some of them, There's traffic. There's the question of walking into a grocery store where there might be a stranger with a gun. There's our combined contribution to world population and climate change. Untold numbers of suffering people that we can feel, but we can't reach. The stress we live and deal with every day that is generated by these thoughts and perceptions is personal, and it's shared. Numbers express a lot. When we take a deep dive into history, how people lived, what they thought, how they related to each other, what they took for granted, what they believed, what they knew or thought they knew, how they organized their communities. Their motivation was, presumably, to give themselves the best chance of survival. That's the code for all living beings. Each one of these considerations were so different for those people so long ago than they are for us. And so much of the underlying difference has to do with number. For example, in our time, it is difficult to defend a sexist point of view. People do, but it is difficult to defend that point of view. But we could view traditional prohibitions of let me finish that. It's difficult to defend a sexist point of view because now we do not need to protect or restrict the activities of females to ensure we'll have a growing population. And we could view traditional prohibitions of homosexuality, transsexuality, masturbation, anal and oral sex, any sexual expression that would not result in population increase as beneficial to the community's survival. We could look at those prohibitions through that lens. And think about encounters with strangers. In the course of our day, most of us probably encounter more people who are strangers than who are familiar. Throughout most of the long history of humans on Earth, maybe it would have been rare for most people to encounter a stranger, especially a stranger with different physical characteristics, such as skin color. We don't know. Of course, we can't assume such rare encounters would be frightening or dangerous, nor can we assume that there was universal intolerance of various sexual expressions. And I'm not suggesting this point as a justification for human history. It's just that for me, I appreciate a few different lenses to look and think about these things through. The reality for most people in human history and into the present is that survival is difficult, and that protecting one's family, one's community, one's clan, and ensuring that they are strong and numerous is more likely to lead to survival. So those strong impulses to fight foes and control the community perhaps have been a matter of survival. Yet, how many stories throughout human history do we know in which the foe turns out to be friendly and the community does not want to be controlled? We have inherited all those hard lessons as well as those dangerous impulses. And we see them played out today. The hard-earned lesson to trust rather than not trust. So we practice a trusting mind, regardless of the object. We don't trust after we figure out if the object is trustworthy. We carry trust. We embody trust. The hard-learned lesson to open rather than close. So we practice with an open heart and open hands. That doesn't mean we're stupid. We have a human mind, complicated and very busy. And we practice with respect for our minds, our Buddha minds. We set our minds to perceive the beauty that is already given, to trust and to discern and to trust again. So, that is what I wrote. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite everyone to stand up and stretch for a minute, and then we can have a discussion. I want to take this. I want to keep my water, and I better keep the clock.
I was just going to let you stretch, and I'll put it back.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Watch it.
Did everyone enjoy the drizzle this morning? Maybe some of you missed it. When I was driving over, the sun was shining and it was drizzling at the same time, and people were running in their shorts. It was great.
Did you get to look behind and see a rainbow?
I did not. I did not want to risk looking behind me as I was driving my.
If anyone has a question, please raise your hand. I'll give the microphone over to you. Set a hand back.
Thank you. That's okay. We can just leave it there. I just need my water.
Hello, thank you so much for your talk. I was struck in particular by the very last thing that you said.
You know, I don't know if it's me or the. I can't hear you very well.
Thank you so much for your talk. I was struck in particular by the very last words when you spoke of trust, discern, and trust again. As I have been exploring consciousness recently, just noticing the thoughts and patterns of thoughts in my head, I have struggled with the transition between discernment back to trust, right? Allowing for worst case scenario thinking and strategy making to change back into a place that is settled and accepting and trusting of process. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that transition in the mind and the heart between discernment and trust.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's like all day long, right? And for me, I can't speak, you know, I speak about our Zen practice as an art, that we are all artists living together in an artist's colony. And protecting each other's space, fiercely protecting our own and each other's space to do this, but not telling each other what to do with the practice itself. Our practice is really personal. So having said that, we're like a bunch of artists. One of our sons is an artist, so I know the community of artists. They're really intense and really hardworking and really, protective of their space and materials and so on and so forth, just like Zen people. But they share, But when they get down and do their art, it's like they're following their own, their own inspiration. So something like that is resonant to me about Zen practice. So having said that, don't take what I say as the way to do it. This is what I do, I'll tell you that. So I am the discernment which can flip over into some kind of anxiety or fretfulness or that sort of thing. I come back to my body. If my body is doing that thing, the shoulders are going up and the breath and all that stuff, okay, let's take a trusting breath. Come on back to trust. I trust trust. I trust trust as my home. And discernment is, human life. It's my human mind, and it's important. But the discernment, so easily spins off into different kinds of anxiety and whatnot. So for me, it's my body. Where did you go? Oh, there you are. It's my body that informs me. Take a breath. Come on back.
Another question?
Thank you for your talk. It was really hit the spot for me. The breaking through the bamboo node. It just seemed like how it is, or it made me think of the times that we live in, that it's extremely difficult, and that the turtle and the wall just gives me a sense of, and acting on pure aspiration feels like the lantern, or like, oh, okay, okay, that's enough, just stay with it. Mm-hmm. But I love the turtle story, because I think I've used that wall metaphor in the old way for so long, and it feels like, oh, wow, like there's another room in the house or another floor, like I didn't even know. So, thank you. And thank you for talking about women's liberation. Really appreciate that.
Yeah. Welcome. Yes, Myrtle the turtle, the tortoise. Definitely, dear teacher.
Thank you for your beautiful talk. And I appreciate your studying our women ancestors and speaking about them. But one thing about, the Buddha and the women who approached him with Mahapajapati, although he did eventually allow them to ordain, there were the 8 special rules. And the legacy of that has been very difficult for women in many countries, and I still don't think, even though there are so many great women teachers in the US now, women Zen teachers, that I think there's still more work to be done, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah. Yes, I have to say that I was rather uninformed about that matter, and so was Norman until he went to the, the International Council of Religions in Chicago. You know what I mean? No. Last summer. It was, that international religious meeting. Anyway, he went to that. And he was he went to a group in which Buddhist nuns were speaking about what they were dealing with in the present. And Norman was floored, and he came home and told me about it. And I have to admit, I was woefully ignorant that so many Buddhist women in some countries are restricted in such extreme ways. It turns out that Taiwan is a very lively place right now. And there's a lot of activism among women Buddhists and moving forward. So there is a way probably for us to connect and to contribute to that effort. I don't know what it is, but I know that there are places in Asia where this is a big, important topic for women's practice and for men's practice too.
I went to 2 Shakyadita conferences. They're international Buddhist women's conferences. One of them was in Vietnam, and so that's a theme at those conferences because there are women from all over. But I'm thinking about the United States also. The Soto Zen Buddhist Association is having a series of talks about the voices of women, because there's a need, I think, still to hear more from our women teachers. And I just wonder how you see that and in the sanghas you visit. Or,
Yeah. I'll just keep talking. I mean, I do a lot with Upaya, which is Upaya founder and teacher as a woman. I have my own little group that's mostly women. Turns out mostly women. It's not by design, but it's turned out that way. And when I look around at Buddhist sanghas, it's often, not always, but it's often at least equal numbers of women, if not more, And historically, of course, when I first started practicing, it was really, the world was a different place, and so were Zen places, the world was a different place. And it has changed radically all around us and in our centers. And there's always more work to do. Yeah. Let's do it.
Is there another question?
Thank you, Kathie. Along similar lines, you mentioned, you talked about the kind of prohibitions that were focused potentially on reproduction, things that don't make sense to us now, but maybe had a reason at the time. And, that's kind of always a struggle that I have in regards to approaching traditions, where there might be wisdom behind certain rituals, acts, rules, and there's also a legacy that comes with them that is perhaps reminiscent of those societies' times. So things that, for example, maybe we do in Buddhism that is not necessarily Buddha's teachings as much as it's kind of what has been transmitted along the way to us. I think modern society, a lot of my friends would probably approach this with a counter tradition and be all of this is nonsense, start over. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's a risk of missing that wisdom in all of this. Yeah. So I'm wondering, how do you strike a balance in let's say, our tradition, mm-hmm. In terms of discerning what are rules, forms, etiquettes that serve a purpose for us, mm-hmm. In practice, in our practice, versus things that are we need to look more critically at? Like, how do you engage with that?
Yeah. So I want to just tell you a little bit about my story, not because it's an example, not because you should follow it, not because of anything, but this was what happened to me. So I first started sitting at the Berkeley Zen Center in 1971. I was 19 years old. And I had been reading about Zen since I was 14. So I was like making a beeline to a Zen center in Berkeley where I went to school. And then I got to the Zen center. Mel Weitzman was there, and he gave me Zazen instruction, and I went and sat with everybody, all those wonderful people, many of whom are gone. But when I walked in, especially for service, I just got this sort of hit that this is like a military thing. What? And then, okay, why does my father was stationed in China during World War II with the Flying Tigers unit. And his older brother was in the CIA, and he was stationed in Vietnam and Korea, and their older brother was a nuclear physicist who worked on the Manhattan Project. So I had this like war, these are really nice people. It was just their generation, that's what was happening. But when I got old enough to kind of look at this family legacy, I looked at it and I said, I don't want any of it. I don't care what I do, but I know I don't want to contribute to that, So so it was with that baggage that I walked into the Zendo and said, shit, this is the military. And so I went home and I thought, okay, what am I gonna do? I've wanted to do this Zen practice for years now. I was just a kid, And here I am, and okay, it's from Japan, I get that, and I get this history thing. I'm going to reinvent this for myself. So what I did was I said, okay, these forms where you turn this way and you do it that way like little marching soldiers, I said, no, this is a dance. I am learning a dance, and I'm going to come into the Zendo to learn a dance. And the thing about a dance, when you dance, like we used to do folk dancing, you do a dance all together and you become one body. It's a beautiful thing. It's like singing, become one voice, one body. And so I thought, I'm going to just change my mind and think of it that way. And so that's what I did. I thought, okay, well, this is time for a service dance and service sing, And for me, two things about that helped me. First of all, that I could take charge of my aspiration to practice. I didn't have to listen to some person tell me what it is. I was going to take charge. But I also wasn't going to abandon my aspiration to practice there. It was Zen that I wanted, but I wanted it for me, So I don't know if that makes any sense to you, and I was a 19-year-old when I did that. But I do believe that if you love the practice, that was the bottom line for me. I love the practice. I love this tradition and I love this practice. How am I going to make this? It's like if you fall in love with somebody who's really difficult, it's like, okay, I have a choice here, Sometimes you can't make it work, but sometimes you just figure it out, You work with it over time, and you allow yourself to change. You allow yourself not to be taken in and abused. You allow yourself to discern. What is this? What is this one about? What is this one about? But also you allow yourself the practice of trust. Trust is something that you generate or in your being. And you can, and it's shared, of course, but it's your it's your practice, and it really takes some effort.
We have time for one more question. There's a question online.
As a 77-year-old artist who has rarely made a living, but has been totally dedicated at her art, but has totally dedicated, the image of just walking into the wall is wonderful. The idea that that's okay, that you just keep walking to the wall because that's what you want to do. That's a very helpful image to me. And also, I want to make sure I get, when you said a quote from Dogen, I tried to write it down. I want to make sure that I got it right. When we see the person, I got down someone new and extraordinary looks back. When we see the person, today is today. So do I have that absolutely right?
When we see the flower, the second is today sees today, but what's the first part?
Oh, today sees today.
Today sees today.
Today sees today.
Well, what's
And the first part is when we see the person, something.
something new sees, okay, think about a coconut tree, no. What is it? We see the person. It's not that wind flaps. Yeah. Investigate.
I thought there was something new and extraordinary.
Yes,
something.
I'll find it. This is worthwhile. Practice with half a heart. I love that too. Practice with heart. Practice with beyond heart. Practice with half a heart. Whatever you got. Yeah. Let's see, it was also about, yes, here we go. When we see the person who has attained Dharma, someone who is new and extraordinary sees us. When we see the person, today sees today. Okay?
Yeah. And thank you. I was just a wonderful, wonderful talk. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.